Good morning, NFC East. Tone, I'm glad you mentioned Carson Wentz before the break. We'll get to him in a second. But there was a topic I wanted to touch on while we're waiting for Alexa Ross here today. Derek Carr is no longer going to be the quarterback of the Las Vegas Raiders. I kind of foreshadowed this when I did my one thing we learned from each team. I thought Derek Carr was playing his last games with the Raiders. You could just tell by the body language and the dysfunction of that organization that he wasn't coming back. And I really, really hate what the Raiders did to him, basically making him the scapegoat for their failures when, since he's been there, they've had the worst defense in the NFL. And I'm not saying Derek Carr's a superstar quarterback here, but there are some teams, and there are some teams in this division that would love to have Derek Carr. There are a lot of teams in the NFL that love to have Derek Carr. When you got Trace McSorley, Jared Stidham, Nick Foles, but there are a lot of teams starting with bad quarterbacks right now. Davis Mills, the list goes on and on. Now Derek Carr's out of a job. I don't know, Tone. Do you feel like we might see Derek Carr in maybe a Commanders uniform next year, maybe a Giants uniform?
Yeah, you really can't, put it past, the NFL to make that happen, right? But as far as his situation currently with the Las Vegas Raiders, it's a shame. And Derek Carr is a good quarterback. Is he a great quarterback? I wouldn't necessarily say that, but he's a good quarterback. He's a reliable quarterback, and I don't think it's random he's having his worst year as one of his worst years as a starter. His worst year from a completion percentage standpoint since his rookie year, where he completed 58% of his passes. This year he's only completing 60% of his passes, and this I don't think it's random that when Jeff McDaniel got there, all of a sudden he's not playing his best football. I've never liked Jeff McDaniel as a head coach hire. We've all known how it happened in Denver. We know what he did to the Colts as far as kind of backing out in that deal.
The guy drafted Tim Tebow at one point.
And it's just, in my opinion, I don't think it's a coincidence. I actually thought that it made more sense for those guys to extend or bring back their interim head coach from last year to help rather than get them to the playoffs, because that team responded to them, or that team responded to him. Also, another thing, I vividly remember, Derek Carr saying during that time that if they don't bring back the interim, I forget what his name was.
Rich Bisaccia. He's special teams coach on the Packers now. Exactly.
I vividly remember Derek Carr saying if they don't bring him back, he's going to have to, reevaluate his options. And obviously, he allowed this season to play out. And I actually think the decision may be a bit mutual. It's one of those things that he doesn't see the writing on the wall. When it comes to Jeff McDaniel, like he doesn't see the silver lining in this thing. He's going to run this into the ground.
Did you have a problem with when Josh McDaniels and brass? I think it was higher than Josh McDaniels, honestly. The benching Derek Carr, that he kind of just packed his bags and went home. Did you have a problem with that?
Have a problem with Derek Carr?
Basically said, I don't want to be a distraction. I basically don't want to be around. I'm not going to be here the rest of the year.
I don't have a problem with it because I'm pretty sure, knowing Derek Carr and the way he does business, the way he handles himself in the public eye, he strikes me as someone who has a strong pulse of his locker room. He strikes me as someone who has a good feel for his veterans and a guy who's pretty transparent with his teammates. I don't think he makes that decision without talking to his team. And I don't think any of his teammates think he's abandoning ship. So, I don't have a problem with I don't have a problem with the way he did it, because just based off his track record, he strikes me as a stand-up guy that, that doesn't shy away from conflict if he needs to handle it.
But by the way, you may be onto something there with the whole Derek Carr reevaluating his options in the offseason, because the Raiders did give him a contract where he's due $40 million in guaranteed money starting next year. Now, of course, he has a no trade clause in there, but you remember how they kept him happy. They got him Davante Adams, which is one of his best friends. So why would you trade for Davante Adams to basically just blow it up after a year when it's not Derek Carr's fault Josh McDaniels can't coach, which is what I want to go to here, why I think he could end up in the NFC East. Even if with how bad Derek Carr has been this year, Don't you think the Commanders have 10 wins at Derek Carr as their quarterback this year?
The Commanders have always been a team that's kind of like been stuck in limbo because of the quarterback position. If you put a competent quarterback in Washington, they can easily be a double-digit win team, like perennially, you know? And not just Derek Carr is going to be available. You got to think, like, there's a good chance you might see Derek Carr and Jimmy Garoppolo in the NFC East.
Yeah, well, by the way, which one of those two ends up as the bridge quarterback for the Colts? You know one of them's going to Indianapolis.
Oh, man, that's a tough one.
I'll tell you who I would pay. I'd pay Derek Carr.
Yeah. Matter of fact, let me ask you this. If you put Derek Carr on the 49ers, how good are they?
How good are the 49ers is Derek Carr? Derek Carr makes the Pro Bowl every year. I know that. He made the Pro Bowl with the Raiders. I'll tell you what. I would love to see Derek Carr in that offense. There are a lot of teams I'd love to see Derek Carr. Derek Carr reminds me of that guy. Like, if you put him in a confident organization with a confident system, we could argue he's a top 10 quarterback in this league. He's not, but I can make the argument for it. I've always liked Derek Carr. I've never got a chance to actually interview the guy, but I've heard a lot of good things about him over the years. And I definitely heard from quarterbacks around the league that, Derek Carr can sling a football. Derek Carr is, as bright as they come when it comes to throwing the football around. So you're right. If you put Derek Carr, by the way, Derek Carr ain't going to be on the 49ers because I think the 49ers might have their quarterback.
Okay, Brock Purdy.
They're not paying him anything. That's the best part. So they can spend in other areas of the roster and get even better.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I have a question, shifting gears a little bit. This is more so Eagle-centric, right? I've been thinking Miles Sanders is a player who has kind of had a rough past couple weeks, fumbling the ball.
Definitely a rough 2 weeks.
Hasn't really been as effective as we would like. And, it's since Jalen Hurts hasn't been there, he hasn't had the same effect on the running game. And I've been telling people, I said, look, Miles Sanders, he's talented. I love Miles Sanders. He's a really good running back. But we have to put into perspective all the pieces around him that allow him to be who he is. I've always talked about the fact that any running back can average 4 yards behind his offensive line. I firmly
he's
believe
average,
that.
but he's
averaged 5.
He's
right.
averaged
So
5.
right. So he's so that's the window, right? That's the buffer. He's good enough to give you an additional yard, right? But again, for me, that begs the question: how valuable is he in particular?
Especially in the big running back market. Do you think you can do better? Or do you think you can
think you can get the same production for someone cheaper?
Yeah, draft a guy and sign a guy, and then you're deeper at the position. That's the other piece to the puzzle.
Right. And you can't, and Eagles fans don't want to have that conversation because they marry themselves to players, right? Once they like a guy, he can do no wrong.
And Miles Sanders is a guy I would keep next year.
I like Miles Sanders, but it's all about the money he would command. Yeah. And he's had a career year. He's going. This is the NFL. Running backs don't get too many cracks at the money tree.
But by the way, what if I doubt this is that? I'm just throwing a number out there. What if it's 3 years, $21 million? Would you keep him?
3 years, $21 million, $7 million a year.
I mean, that's a lot.
I see. It's not even about what I keep him, right? I don't think Howie Roseman wants to pay a running back.
I don't think he does either. And I think with the plethora of draft picks they have, they could find another one. They found Miles Sanders in the second round. Why can't they find another one?
I don't see any incentive. Well, let me not say incentive. I don't see why they feel like they should be married to him. Right? Like, again, Miles Sanders is the best running back in the room. That's a fact. There's no question. But in this NFL, 17 games, rushing for 1,000 yards is not the hardest thing to do.
But how many have done it this year?
Say that again?
How many have done it this year? I'm going to look this up on you.
That's a good point.
I'm going to look this up on you right now.
That's a really
Because
good point.
I don't think we've had many. I know we've had Derrick Henry. I know we had Miles Sanders. I know we had Josh Jacobs.
So there's Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb, Saquon, Miles, Dalvin Cook, Justin Fields.
So
he's a quarterback.
8 guys.
Travis Etienne. So 7 running backs.
Yeah, 7 guys have done it.
And Tony Pollard is 12 yards away from doing it. Christian McCaffrey is 17 yards from doing it. Well, 27
which is impressive. Christian McCaffrey's only that little away from doing it, considering he had to acclimate himself to a new system and was brutally underused in Carolina.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But all right, not too many running backs rush for 1,000 yards, but more. There are more teams. There are more teams who are running back by committee. These are bell cow running backs we're talking about here, like Josh Jacobs. He's a 3-down running back. Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb, Saquon Barkley, Dalvin Cook. These guys are used significantly more, right?
By the way, quick fantasy story for you. I know no one cares about anybody's fantasy team, but I have 3 of those top 7 running backs this year, and I'm out.
So how much does it really attribute to winning to having the best running back, right? Again, when the Eagles won the Super Bowl, they didn't have the best running backs. They had one of the best combinations.
Well, they had Blunt, they had Clement, and Ajayi was basically the missing piece. Like, they were already good running the football when they got Ajayi.
Like being a good running team is more on the offensive line than the running back. And the Eagles have been putting a lot of resources into the offensive line, into the offensive line position, into that room. I just don't think I want my organization spending big money on a running back especially if we don't have to. This is like, you can find a combination of running backs that are serviceable to get the job done, and the offensive line pretty much does most of the heavy lifting.
Well, here's the other problem. You got to pay Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. You got to pay Javon Hargrave. You got to pay James Bradbury if you choose to do that, which, again, that's another offseason topic. But, again, like, you got to pay a lot of people. Do you really want to do this with Miles Sanders when, look, the Buffalo Bills got James Cook in, the 4th round? And he's a pretty productive running back. He doesn't get the ball enough, but he catch passes out of the backfield, and he's effective. James Cook looks like he's going to be a 1,000-yard rusher at some point in time in his career. Probably in Buffalo. But you can find these guys later.
Yeah,
I mean, look at Tyler Algier.
The Seahawks found Kenneth Walker in the 2nd round.
Kenneth Walker was a beast in college, too. I don't know how he fell. There's going to be
because
a lot of
teams don't draft running backs high.
Yeah, exactly. Like Bijan Robinson, everybody's talking about how high he's going to go. I'm like, not as high as you think, because teams don't draft running backs high. So who knows? Maybe the Eagles have a mid-first round pick. Howie Roseman would never do it, but just saying.
Yeah, and look, I don't want to beat the dead horse. I don't want to pile on Miles Sanders. He's having a great year.
No, this isn't even the Miles Sanders thing. This is more, will Howie Roseman pay Miles Sanders? Miles Sanders is going to get paid by
somebody. He's having a great year. Someone's going to pay him, right? But it's not going to happen here. It's just not. And fans need to be okay with that. They need to understand that this offensive line is what matters more than anything. And we got so many other pieces. You pay them. Those guys you pay, because they're the ones that's moving the line. They make it easy for the running back. Like I said, any running back can average 4 to 5 yards a carry on this offense. I'm sorry, I strongly believe that. Maybe not.
You don't have to believe it. The proof's in the pudding.
Straight like that, Jeff. So, again, and you said it. They have so many other people to pay. That's coming up. T.J. Edwards, James Bradbury, if they decide to keep him. C.J. Gardner-Johnson.
I'll give you one. I know he'll probably get paid this offseason too, because he's really good. How would Tony Pollard look on this team?
That would be interesting, because Tony Pollard has he should have a lot of treads on the tires, just because he hasn't
just because Dallas is stupid.
Yeah, that Dallas is funny, man. I'll be honest. I thought Dallas would trade Ezekiel Elliott by now.
They can't. Who are they trading him for? I wouldn't take him.
That's a good point too. How many years left on that contract with Ezekiel Elliott?
Well, I think he can get out of it after this year. I think this is like the first year where there's like no guarantees, and it's not like a significant cap hit, but they still got, I think it's 3 years.
Yeah, like the thing is though, you don't want to be the Cowboys, right? They marry themselves to players. If they pay them, they're like, oh, I guess,
Yeah.
They overpay average guys.
What's the term? What's the term now? Tone mid. Is that the term now? Mid. He's mid.
He's mid. Yeah, he's mid.
He's mid. That's what Zeke is. He's mid now. He's not Zeke anymore. He's
a really good red zone running back. I'll tell you that.
Oh yeah. Oh, I'd take him in the red zone 8 day of the week. Man, I'll tell you what. I'll give the Cowboys credit. I fear them when they get in the red zone because they got Zeke and Tony Pollard. You don't know who's getting the ball.
Yeah, you really don't. So it's going to be interesting to find out how the Eagles handle this offseason. And I know we're going to get hurt ourselves. We still have the playoffs to go through, so on and so forth. But these are conversations that need to be had.
No, it is because you want to know if you could bring everybody back on this team next year. Obviously, that's not the case. I mean, this team is going to look significantly different next year, but you got to trust the people in place that they're still going to be really good because, oh, by the way, the quarterback's getting paid. I hate to tell people that.
Quarterback's going to get paid.
You got a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. He better get paid.
I agree with you 100% because if he doesn't get paid here, someone else will. And you don't want to have a lame duck quarterback going into the final year of his contract.
There's one guy I do not want to see in this division next year, and there's a chance he might be, and that's Lamar.
I think Lamar's going to Miami.
You think he's going to Miami? Yeah, I could see. You know what? I'd love to see him just stay in Baltimore, but why would you want to stay there if they're not helping you? They're giving him Deshaun Jackson and Sammy Watkins to throw to. That would have been great 7 years ago.
Yeah, who's the best wide receiver he's ever played with? What, Hollywood Brown?
Hollywood Brown, probably.
And Hollywood Brown is, I don't know. I wouldn't even consider him a top 15 wide receiver.
He's been kind of disappointing in Arizona, but he's been hurt too.
He's a really small guy. To think that
what is it with the Ravens and receivers? They were like the Eagles before this year with receivers. Just can't get anybody.
Well, I think as much as I hate for this to probably be true, I don't know if wide receivers feel like they can really get theirs in Baltimore. Unless you're the
T.O. didn't even want to go there. You remember that? You remember all that shenanigans before he actually got the Philly, or were you too young?
I might have been too young to remember the whole, that those offseason shenanigans. Yeah. That was At that point, I wasn't paying attention to off seasons that closely.
Let's put it this way to make a long story short. T.O. and his agent forgot to basically file for free agency. He complained about then he forgot, then they missed the deadline. So basically the only way he was going out of there is if he was getting traded. They traded him to Baltimore. So I'm like, well, there goes that pipe dream of T.O. becoming an Eagle. And T.O. was pretty much like, nah.
I'm not going to Baltimore.
I ain't going there. So basically he got his way to Philadelphia, and the Eagles traded a 5th round pick and Brandon White. I think Baltimore was actually involved in the trade. I think Baltimore got the draft pick. It's crazy. Yeah. His rights were traded to Baltimore or something like that. It was really good.
That's strange. It was a strange NFL back then.
Oh, the NFL was really I'll tell you what, Tone. Free agency in the 90s was insane because it was a new thing. And you just had guys switching teams all the time. Then they were signing 1-year deals. Dion, 1 year is a 49er, next year he's a Cowboy. Eric Allen was on the Saints. It was just a weird time. Ricky Waters signed with the Eagles, it was a big deal. William Fuller signed with the Eagles, it was a big deal. You got these guys to fill it. Irving Fryer came, and everybody's like, Irving Fryer? He's old, and he was coming with the Eagles. Just a weird time.
Do you think, because I've been thinking about this playoff run coming up, and there's a lot of pressure on everybody involved, but there's a lot of pressure on Jalen Hurts to try to get rid of that, to kind of get rid of that Tampa Bay demon that's been on his back, because a lot of people still hold that against him.
Well, those people are stupid, by the way.
How so?
Okay, this is where I think people are stupid and where Twitter can be stupid. How can you get on a guy like Justin Herbert for not making the playoffs and slamming him? And then you got a guy like Jalen Hurts who makes the playoffs and you want to slam him for one bad game at 23 years old. I don't understand. Did anybody rationally think the Eagles, who weren't even supposed to be in the playoffs last year, were going to beat Tampa? No. They were. He was going up against Tom Brady. They were on the road. Tampa Bay was clearly better than Philadelphia. Yeah, Hurts played terrible. I didn't expect him to play well. I was hoping he played better that game, but I kind of knew the result going into that. It was more of, okay, enjoy the ride because you're happy they're in. It was kind of like the Phillies this year, only the Phillies had a lot more talent and got to the World Series. The Eagles weren't going to the Super Bowl last year. So everybody wants to pile on Jalen Hurts for losing a playoff game to Tom Brady and that defense at 23 years old when I can name so many issues with that game. Like, we're judging Jalen Hurts, who's 24 now off one playoff start. Are you kidding me? I know people did that with Lamar, too. And I'm like, okay, here's the difference, though. Lamar's team went 14-2 when they were the number 1 seed. Oh, and they were blowing everybody out of the water when it happened. Jalen Hurts is not supposed to win that playoff game last year. So I don't know what your irrational expectations were.
Yeah. A lot of people say, yeah, it's not the fact that they lost, how bad he looked in the loss. He looked like he was out of depth.
Everybody looked bad. The defense looked horrible.
It's a fact.
Yeah, you want to get out Jonathan Gannon to point to the playoff loss, not some game against Dallas.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. But this is going to be interesting because Jalen Hurts has an opportunity of lifetime right now, and like you said, this team is going to look very differently next year. And you got to strike while the iron is hot. This window, this path doesn't get any more clear for Jalen Hurts and Philadelphia Eagles.
No, it doesn't, and that's the thing, right? Yeah, if you want to say he needs to exercise the playoff demons this year, if he loses this year, like in the divisional round, yes, that's bad because they're supposed to win now. Yeah, right. The expectation has changed. Like McNabb's first year, they were home against Tampa, but everybody thought Tampa was the better team. The equalizer was it was freaking freezing in Philadelphia. I was there, it was cold. So that was the difference. Last year, they weren't beating Tampa. They weren't. And you're kidding yourselves if you thought they could. Or you're just lying to yourself. This year, it's a heck of a lot different. It's the same way with, remember Josh Allen's first playoff appearance? Like, okay, they were the 2 seed. They got a home win. But then they went to, and they got to the AFC Championship game because they had 2 home games. But Josh Allen never started the playoffs on the road. Joe Burrow never started the playoffs on the road. Patrick Mahomes has never played a road playoff game. He wouldn't know what a road playoff game. Jalen Hurts is more road playoff starts than Patrick Mahomes. That's how crazy that is. So, again, it's different when you're at home. It's different when you're supposed to win. So, I just don't understand, like, the whole Jalen Hurts went 15 of 31, whatever. I'm like, okay, Steven Nelson looked terrible in that game last year. Defensive line couldn't get a sack on Tom Brady, essentially. That's a game that if you're Nick Sirianni, you use as fuel for the next year. And they did. And also, can we get over the narrative that the Eagles defense struggles against good quarterbacks? Because
I was just talking to John about that. Every team in the NFL struggles against a good quarterback.
Yeah, like, everybody. There are no good quarterbacks in the NFL. There's like 4 of them. I don't
understand the logic because, and especially the way the rules are set up now, good offense beats good defense all the time.
All the time.
Like it's set up like that. It's like a great offense will beat a great defense. The league is literally set up for the offense to prevail over the defense. So when people say, "Oh yeah, the Eagles can't do their thing, can't handle business against good quarterbacks," most teams can't. Because you can't touch these guys. It's a weird narrative.
I hate to tell people this, but Kirk Cousins is a pretty good quarterback. They seem to shut him down. Everybody goes, "Oh, it's Kirk Cousins." I'm like, Kirk Cousins has the most game-winning drives in football in a season ever now. So he's doing something right. Dak Prescott is a good quarterback. Yeah, Dak had a good game against them. Congrats. He always has a good game against the NFC East. But yeah, you're right. Like, oh, he got torched by Patrick Mahomes. I'm like, who doesn't get torched by Patrick Mahomes? Who shuts down Patrick Mahomes? Who shuts down Josh Allen? Who shuts down Joe Burrow? I'm sure teams are looking at this now. Who shuts down Jalen Hurts?
Guys like that, you don't shut them down. Your job and your goal should be to make things a little more difficult.
Yeah,
not shut them down. If you spend too much time trying to shut them down, you're going to lose that game.
Exactly. So let's look at a potential path here in the playoffs. Say Dallas wins, everything's chalk. You're going to play Dallas. So yeah, you're going to have to win in a shootout. Oh, and by the way, you beat them, you're probably going to play San Francisco or Minnesota in the title game. You're probably going to have to win a shootout there, too. I mean, that's the thing. It's so weird, right? Because I love what Brock Purdy's doing. I love this 49ers team. But doesn't it feel like a little safer playing the 49ers knowing it's Brock Purdy, even though he's playing really well?
Yeah, I don't think Brock Purdy is built for a shootout.
Or is he the next Tom Brady and we're just not noticing it?
Well, he has a lot to do before we even start to consider him that. Tom Brady has set a precedent. I mean, sure, everyone wants to say they found the guy, right? They found that gem in the 6th or 7th round, so on and so forth. He's playing well, and let's see how he looks where teams have significantly more film on him. Now teams are starting to establish trends, and Kyle Shanahan is a hell of a schemer. So he's putting him in very, very favorable positions. So, I mean, look, at the end of the day, he has to throw the ball. I want to give credit where credit is due, but at the same time, Kyle Shanahan's making it very easy. Very easy.
Even when Brock Purdy throws an interception, it's like, okay, was that even his fault? Like, a ball was tipped off a receiver's hands and Washington just happened to catch it.
Yeah, I agree. So, look, let's take our final break of the show, and we're going to go into these final 10 minutes. And I think I have a question for you, Jeff. I'm going to save it for the final 10 minutes. All right?
That works for me, Tom.
You guys are locked in on Good Morning NFC East. Make sure you guys continue to smash that like button. Continue to stay engaged on JAKIB Sports. He's Jeff Kerr. I'm your guy, Tone DeShields